When we shot actually in the city of London, we really didn't have too many problems in terms of that.
Well, there was official procedure, which was it was down to the bobby on the beat.
Officer! Officer, I killed those people last night.
He could say piss off and you were fucked.
All right, you two, move along, right?
Because I had done such extensive urban shooting in Chicago on the Blues Brothers, I had the Metropolitan Police at Scotland Yard speak to the Chicago cops.
John was great at setting. He's a great salesman. He could sell anything, and he could sell this. He said, I've been shooting the Blues Brothers. You want to come and see it? It's on in Warner Brothers, Leicester Square. I'll get you tickets anytime. You'll see what we did there.
And what's great about John is he knows what he wants, and you don't go through a lot of the BS that you do with a lot of other directors. He gives you the freedom. He gives you guidance. He answers the questions, and made some fun stuff.
Landis is terrific to work with as an actor. First of all, he has an absolute knowledge of actors. He really enjoys them, and he likes getting things out of them, and he knows what you're doing, so that you feel very safe that when he edits things together, he's not going to leave you with egg on your face, because he's going to look for all the best things. He never allows moments to die on set. He's permanently up, talking, joking, talking about what's going on, talking about things that he's doing, just making jokes.
He was the first real director I worked with, guy who knew how to talk to actors and hang out with us after shooting, and I've become a director since, and I think of John a lot. He's very direct, and when he hates something, he just says it, oh, that was terrible, and you don't take an offense.
Very animated, very enthusiastic, and a lot of fun. Now, I smile every time I say his name.
It's interesting. The only change in the screenplay from 1969 to 1981 was in the Aero cinema. When I wrote the script, it was cartoon cinema. And it was the same thing, only it was cutting to cartoon violence, like a Roadrunner cartoon or something. And when I came back in 81 to scout, the Aero cinema had suddenly become a porno cinema.
How much is it?
£2.80, sir.
And I thought, what do I do? So we made our own little porno.
The first thing we shot when we were at Twickenham Studios was this porno sequence. We had never worked with any of these people in the British crew. Joyce Hurley, David Tringham, Bob Painter. So the first thing we're doing is this porno. So I think we shot 2 days to do the porno. And the crew was sort of like, okay, what is this movie?
I said, well, what about a script for it then? They're going to say anything?
What are you doing here? You promised never to do this kind of thing again.
I never promised you any such thing.
Not you Twitter.
I've never seen you before in my life.
Oh, sorry.
I had a model agent and they sent me for an audition and I went to meet John. I can't remember where I actually had to go. I think it might have been Twickenham or somewhere, the film studios. I just went along and met him. He seemed very nice and I was really surprised I got the job. He did explain it really well, just saying, we're making this horror movie and it's very funny and it's very horrific. And then there's one scene in it which is, a porno movie that we're filming especially to add that comic element.
Jesus Christ.
That whole scene in there, I like that the soundtrack is this orgasmic woman, Lindsay is coming during the whole. It's very odd. I like it.
We shot that about 3 weeks before principal photography began, and we got these performers, and they built the sets and put flats all around to stop onlookers, because in the studios you can't lock everybody up, and just the camera crew and people. And it really was hilarious. And as the day went by, you could see holes appearing in these flats, people looking through, spying on it.
The one funny thing I do remember is at the end they did a little funny bit to camera. I couldn't work out what was happening, but John Landis put a screen up in front and he sat and was saying it was the first thing he'd ever written. And he was saying it's very funny, very horrific. And then the screen comes down, and obviously we're all in the back, all four of us on the bed, jumping up and down, bouncing up and down.
Again, this is just one of the other areas where I think the crew was like, all right, we'll just have to put up with these idiot Americans and get through this because they're paying us and whatever.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, David.
I talked to Griffin, and it's like, I got some other bad news for you then, you know, like what? You know, when the sequence in the porno theater, it's going to be a puppet. It's not really going to be you. It's like, what? You know, it's like a third of his part.
I was quite threatened by the damn puppet. And I remember being quite genuinely upset and kind of hurt, I think.
But he wanted to do it. But, you know, you can't tear off people's faces. You can build on a skull, but it's hard to tear off if it's a real person.
We did a big foam mask to look like the skeletal puppet, and we thought it would work for far away. I mean, it looked pretty good, actually, but it's just bulkier. And, you know, makeup's an additive process, and I wanted to do something where we took away, and I started with a life cast of Griffin, and it basically first made what I thought would be Griffin's skull based on that life cast, and then made a piece on the face that was the remaining flesh, which was just a little thin appliance that went over it, and I think just a polyfoam neck piece that went on there, and part of the polyfoam body.
You look awful. Thank you.
To operate that puppet, there was a cutaway under the floor with a partition of the cinema seats. Griffin Dunn was operating the jaw.
These guys, you know, were very gracious in letting me have the controls, and it was very helpful. I'd be looking at a monitor to see how I would look, and it was a very unique experience to be an actor playing that part, controlling the way I spoke. It was, I thought, a totally fair trade-off.
I want you to meet some people. David Kessler, this is Gerald Bringsley.
The whole filming was a long 3 days. I remember I stood on a pile of beer crates because I was next to the puppet. So I didn't have a seat. I was standing. The other two on the side were sitting. I remember John wanted me to be very heavy. You know, playing really kind of... and the other two to be very light and twittery.
You must die, David Kessler.
David, this is Harry Berman and his fiancée, Judith Browns.
Hello.
Hello. They kept pouring more and more and more blood over me, and there came a point where I actually didn't want any more blood being dribbled all over my face, but still, it was wonderful to see yourself change.
We had more blood there than I'd ever used before, 20 gallons, I think. John just said, more.
That was his mantra. More blood!
I do remember very carefully putting blood on them, trying to make sure that it didn't get in their eyes and things. And Landis just going, no, here, give me the blood, and just like dumping it on their heads, you know.
It wasn't the makeup person, it was John. Just pouring blood over us all the time, the whole bloody time.
He was just pouring it all over them. It was going in their eyes and everywhere, but it's kind of how it would be, you know.
The gun!
We did have a terrific time when we were covered in blood and we were covered in scabs, and we were having our lunch, and we'd been asked if we'd sit to one side because people were being put off by the fact that we were covered in blood and scabs. And as we were eating our lunch, bits of our faces were falling off into our meals, and we were having to pick the bits out. And because he thought it was so funny, we just laughed our way through it, whereas it could have been horrible.
You must take your own life. That's easy for you to say. You're already dead.
No, David. Harry and I and everyone you murder are not dead. The undead.
The undead come back to bitch and moan about being undead and try to convince him to kill himself.
I could hang myself.
No, if you did it wrong, it could be painful. You'd choke to death.
So what? Let him choke.
I like how the bums are so pissed off, and they're vindictive. Jack feels the need to defend him.
Do you mind? The man's a friend of mine.
I brought him here so that you can convince him to kill himself, but you don't have to be so, hurtful about it. It's just... I always envisioned it to be four-legged. I wanted to be this great big beast.
I wanted it to be biped. And I was actually hoping for something a little more on the man side as well. I always thought it was kind of interesting, that kind of combination of animal and person. But John said, four-legged hound from hell.
For Christ's sake, show me the monster in here!
John always said he's never going to show me that. Because I don't really want to see the wolf other than just for a couple seconds. And that's one reason, he's sculpted with an extreme kind of expression to begin with. I was worried that if we relied totally on the mechanism to make the expression, that they would use a part when it isn't making an expression. We'd shoot something, but they'd cut in before or after when it was, So I thought if it's only going to be this long, let's make it look scary, no matter, even if we're not pulling any cables or doing anything.
I think Rick based it on his dog.
I had two dogs at the time. I had a German Shepherd, a white German Shepherd, and a Kieshound, or Kieschen, as they're called sometimes, which was this Harrier dog and kind of almost wolf-like, A lot of times I'll look in the mirror and I'll make faces and kind of like be working on sculptures, and it kind of looks like me. And my dog was there, so it's like, okay, he's kind of like a wolf, He's got 4 legs, and he had this big mane of hair, which the wolf kind of had. And so, yeah, it was very much based on my dog Bosco.
How do you get an impression of the size of the creature on the film? I think the only time you see it up close against another human being is when it bites the detective's head off.
What the hell's going on here? Some kind of animal, sir.
The head. Did Rick tell you about the head?
Frankly, it wasn't all that exciting. And John said, I'm never going to see it. I'm just going to see it bounce.
I've directed several movies now in the UK, and only once did I have a communication problem. I took the head, and I said, okay, the next shot, just get a little Dutch on the hood of the car, this car right here, and we'll throw the head in and it'll bounce off. And the whole crew's looking at me like this. And I'm like, I want you to take the head and bounce it off the hood of the car and we'll get a shot. And finally I said, look, and I took the head and I walked over and I put it on the hood of the car. And it was like a light bulb went off. They all went, oh, the bonnet. You mean the bonnet? Oh, okay. Why didn't you say so?
To actually make it look like there's a real wolf running through Piccadilly Circus, we tried a dog in a werewolf suit and it looked kind of clunky. And finally, Rick came up with this kind of thing that we could sort of move around.
Just remember one night not sleeping and getting up and actually thinking about how we used to do this wheelbarrow race thing when we were a kid, where somebody would hold your feet and you would just walk on your hands, And I thought, well, if we could do something kind of like that and make some fake back legs, maybe that would work. And that's kind of what we did. I talked to Doug Beswick, and Doug made this board. It's basically just a plank with a little hinge in it where the waist is, and you put somebody on it and you could kind of walk. And one of the guys that was on my crew, this guy Kevin Brennan, we made the wolf suit to fit him. And we were in England, we had decided to make it like a tag team thing, and got this other guy, Brendan Hughes, somebody that we found that was Kevin's size, to play the wolf.
It wasn't a stuntman, it was a trained dancer who had this really strong torso, so he could hold himself in there at this awkward angle and just be with his legs sticking out the end with nothing to support them, really. It was clever.
I became enamored of Rick's work, so I showed it too much. I still think when I see the movie, you see it too much, the wolf. But my favorite shot of the wolf in the picture is the guy in the tubes when he collapses on the escalator and looks down, and the wolf enters like that at the bottom of the escalator. And that's my favorite shot because it looks so fucking big. And what is that, And you don't really see it, but you see it. I like that.
John always laughs and would say things like, well, of course, the most gross moment is created because a bus tries to avoid a dog on the street.
It was very, very, very difficult to get them, the authorities in London, to allow us to shoot in Piccadilly Circus. But Joyce Hurley was the one who said, I think we can make this work, and she did.
That was the big problem, because even on Saturday night or early Sunday morning, there was still traffic going around there, and we had to talk to the police.
We had a meeting, I remember, about 7 o'clock at night, one night after shooting, with the commissioner, the chief of police. And in Piccadilly Circus, we've got this fantastic sequence with the bus and turning around and people coming everywhere and this wolf coming out and creating mayhem. And the police said, really? And how are you going to do that? He said, well, ask him. Well, what we'll do is we'll have stuntmen in each of these streets, about 7 streets, is it, coming into Piccadilly Circus, and waiting in cars, and then we'll have extras on the pavements to keep back the public, and we have 5 to 7. Well, how many cameras, John? 7, 8. 8 cameras. We have 8. Yes, what I thought. 8 cameras all over the place. One in the bus, up on the buildings, in the street, everywhere. And then, when you give us the nod, we'll say stand by. And then, when we say action, all the vehicles will drive out into the streets so that no public vehicles can get past. Wolf will come out, the bus will do a turn, somebody will fall out, there'll be cars smashed everywhere, and then we'll say, cut. Will come out and they'll sweep up all the glass, sweep up all the broken vehicles, and the place will be clear and the public will be through, and it will happen in seconds.
We had the opportunity to rehearse for 2 weeks, which we had to do. We were going to shoot in Piccadilly. Now, the police had not let anybody shoot in Piccadilly for something like 15 years.
We did 2 nights, the Saturday night into Sunday and the Sunday into Monday. And we were told that we had to be finished by 6 o'clock on Monday morning.
So we had to go in there 100% totally prepared. Like, we rehearsed it as best we could. Then we got a guy called Dave Bickers in, who's one of the best engineers and car prep people in the world. And he had his wrecking crews there, parked up every side street. And I think it's something like 2 minutes, 30 seconds from saying action to having the roads swept and clean and ready for public transport. The bus had to do its 180-degree spin, and I never did the spins in the rehearsals because the bus does not spin. Dave Bickers was there. He said, well, I could do that for you, all right, he said. I'd have cut a hole in the bottom of your bus. And we went, you can do what you like with it. You can do it. He said, oh, it'd take me 2 days. I said, fantastic. And he took one of our air rams, inverted it, basically put 10-inch forklift rubber wheels under it, and at the press of a button then, lifted the inside wheel about 3/4 inch off the ground, and went some going into the spin. So now you had wheels going at 90 degrees, and I could do 360-degree spins in it all day long.
Chief of Police said to me, you cleared that bus away quicker than we clear accidents, which I thought was rather a feather in our cap.
Because it wasn't just a big crash with the bus, and I mean, it involved like 15, 20 vehicles. It was that we had to do it, get it off the street in 2 minutes, do it again. And this is what Les Dilley did great. We built a reproduction of the corner of, I think, Shaftesbury and Piccadilly, a street that the theater's on, but only like a story and a half high.
That I reproduced down at the airport. I think it was an ex-airport, old airport in Weybridge. Yeah. And built the whole street and shop fronts.
He had a great idea that I was thinking, how are we going to match our set to the real place exactly? And Les said, no, we should match the real place to our set, which he meant the dressing. And that was quite brilliant. So it was identical because we just brought our stuff and put it in their windows. But the Bureau de Change, where I go crashing through the window.
Well, John was a stuntman, and it was very good.
Because I had worked with some of the stunt guys before, they said, why aren't you doing a stunt, John? So I said, okay, I'll do a stunt. Because I didn't want to do anything hard. So I said, I'll go through the window.
I hit him and hammered him through the window. He's brilliant. No stuntman could have done it better. It was fantastic.
When I did it, the balsa wood didn't break. I hit this thing and I was supposed to go right through it and through the glass.
All the crew held up their marks and they all gave me a 2 out of 10. And he got really upset. He said, I wasn't that bad. He said, no, but you weren't that good.
I was convinced that one of them had sabotaged it. Like, you bastards. It actually worked incredibly well. And was complicated because we just didn't have enough time at the real location.
Sister Hobbs said there's a disturbance in Piccadilly Circus involving some sort of mad dog.
David.
A tremendous amount of the success of the film is Jenny and John Woodvine, because when they believe it, you believe it.
Don't just hold this. Let me through!
She brings a tremendous integrity and sincerity. So at the end, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell this hairy puppet that you love it.
David? Is it you?
I was slightly puzzled by what exactly one was doing, because of course there's one thing if you're talking to a wolf, there's another thing, because I had the reality through the whole thing of having a boyfriend who just happened to be a werewolf, but it worked as a character, But suddenly I'm faced with this idea of a person, talking to a wolf down an alleyway. And John said, no, it's David. You see David down there.
David. They're going to kill you.
And of course, when you see the piece edited together, there's, I'm looking down there very earnestly, and then there's a shot to this wolf going, and I go, I love you, very earnestly to this wolf, which of course is very funny.
She pulled it off. I thought she was really moving.
I love you, David.
We had a lot of problems with the censors. There was a lot more concern about the nudity than the violence, and it was kind of surprising to us.
They hated David making love to Jenny, basically.
There were some nudity issues, and there was the issue of the sequence of the bombs.
Here! Who's there?
That's not Winston.
There's a scene I shot that's part of that sequence where the wolf bites down on one of the bums and pulls him out of the shot.
Mary, Mother of God!
And then his body comes back in, missing, like torn like here. It was very violent and very shocking. And in my first two previews in New York and Chicago, the audience was so stunned by it that they started talking for the next 5 minutes. Holy shit, did you see that? Well, after a big scare. So, like an idiot, I thought, shh, you're missing all this exposition. So I just cut the scene, which is too bad because, I probably should have left.
I think there was another one too. It was something to do with Griffin's face.
Jack, he's eating a piece of toast. So I had at one point, a piece fell, like it went right through him and fell on. We pushed it off, but the rating board thought that was too much. I don't know why.
I was surprised though that that would be something that they would object to. Blood, yes. Gore, yes. But toast falling through an open throat, I don't know. There must be a new category or something.
John Peters and Peter Guber came to the cutting room to see the finished film, and they were quite taken aback by the gore and very upset and ranting. And I said, okay, give me your notes.
There was a lot of heat going back and forth about the violence.
Right, I said, give us a week to 10 days to address these notes and then come back. So they went away. They came back in 10 days. We showed them the exact same movie.
Good movie.
Mm-hmm. And they liked it.
If anything, I thought it would be more graphic. But when you think about it, it's really not that much on-screen violence.
They really thought I'd made all their changes, didn't do a damn thing.
A lot of people liked the script, thought it was really interesting. And a lot of people were very, very put off by it and really didn't think it was very good. And when they saw the movie, they said, my God, you've completely rewritten. It's totally different. And it wasn't. If you look at the script and you follow the dialogue, it's identical.
Jack.
David.
You're not having a good time, are you?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, look around. Isn't this a fun place?
Well, I like it here.
Before its official release on August the 21st, 1981, the film was subjected to 2 test screenings. This would determine whether or not a rowdy John Landis audience were ready for the shock and horror that they clearly were not expecting.
It was Chicago first. This theater in Chicago, they had put on the marquee the new comedy from the director of Animal House. So the place is packed, and they're really loving the movie until Jack is murdered. And then I'd say, 45% of the people got up and left. And then after Jack, I'll never forget it. We're like, oh my God. We literally ended up like 100 people out of 1,000 people. So the next night in Syosset, Long Island, which for many years was the largest grossing theater in the country, it was all kids on a Saturday night. And I went out before the movie started this. Hello, I'm John Landis. I'm the director of this movie. I have to warn you, I said, this movie's full of nudity and violence. The whole audience went, yay! You know. I said, that's a horror film. Yay! So they loved the movie. And I think the difference was expectations.
When I went to see the film for the very first time, Landis actually insisted we all went, Griffin and David and myself, we all went, not to the premiere uptown in a posh cinema, but went downtown to a fairly seedy cinema.
What was that?
I don't know.
I'll check on the house.
And John's going, no, this is the place, this is where you have to see it with a proper audience, a real audience. And he just knew that people were going to react.
And of course, I took my young daughters along, and they both buried their heads in my lap. At the first sign of danger.
I was absolutely not bowled over. I thought it was really good. Everybody was. We thought, hey, we worked on a really good movie. At last we worked on a good movie.
We saw the film. I went with the boys to Westwood.
I don't even remember anything about the movie. I was just basically waiting for the transformation. And when the transformation happened, everybody clapped in the theater.
And it was like, okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, we did it. We made this thing and people cheered.
I guess there had been Wolfen and The Howling, a couple of other werewolf movies. Before that, it must have been 20 years since they had done anything like that. And, of course, the year we come out, there's 2 other werewolf movies, which kind of took the edge off us a bit.
No one really appreciated it either at the time. I remember vividly the reviews were quite negative.
It didn't get all bad reviews, but it didn't get very good reviews.
In general, John never got particularly good reviews on any of the movies he did.
I was a critic for the New York Times, a woman, and she wrote a pretty unflattering review of An American Werewolf in London, in which she praised Jenny's performance and Griffin and David and Rick Baker's work. I mean, she made out a nice sentence. And then she said, the picture almost works despite the ham-fisted screenplay and direction by John Landis. So John Belushi calls me up from New York. Do you see the New York Times? Yeah. Did you fuck her? I just remember that.
It actually put critics in a bad mood that, why doesn't John Landis decide what he wants to make, a horror movie or a comedy? You can't do both.
Oh, be serious, would you?
John likes and knows horror films, and he's a funny guy. He has a good sense of humor.
The audience understood that was the genius, what was unique and special about the movie.
It's not just a horror movie. The comedy was very funny.
Yes, sir?
A naked American man stole my balloons.
What?
And the blend seemed to be just right, but I'm sure that it was helped by that, by the reality of the characters and the warmth. You actually liked them and you actually cared about them.
The audience had to believe that they could be Jack and David, that could be them.
Everyone relates to the feeling of being strangers in a strange land and being in the wrong place, and camaraderie, and it's a very straightforward story.
As Shakespeare once said, the play's the thing. And the fact is, John had put together a tremendous, gripping, interesting, page-turning story that was rooted in character.
it just speaks to people. I mean, most people are used to, moors with mists and, Lon Chaney, who's just a middle-aged guy in a wolf suit, These were kids.
Look at me. Here I sit in a porno theater in Piccadilly Circus talking to a corpse.
As long as you believe that Griffin Dunn's character is dead and he's come back to warn his friend.
The supernatural, the power of darkness, it's all true.
There's nothing else that you have to suspend belief about.
I understand, all right. You're one of the undead, and I'm a werewolf.
And the makeup holds up, Credit to Rick again.
He got the accolades quite rightly.
I was very shocked at the whole Academy Award thing. I mean, for one, wasn't ever a real category for makeup. I got nominated, couldn't even believe that, to actually get an Oscar and be up there and have some, Vincent Price and Kim Hunter give you this award, and it's like, it's pretty cool. Well, American Werewolf is probably the movie that I'm going to be remembered for more than anything else.
I meet people a lot who say, I became a makeup artist because of that movie, and they were so impressed with Rick's work.
It was just innovative. It was groundbreaking. And it's a benchmark since then of movies to attain to, and very few can equal it, let alone better it.
It's not a stylized film. It's not made to be an 80s film. It's a film with reference to the past, drawing on Landis's knowledge of other films.
Lon Chaney Jr. and Universal Studios maintain that's the mark of the wolf man.
It's just a very good story, very well told.
Werewolf is an artist's vision, from start to finish, and, mind you, it's an insane, crazy, hyperactive guy, but it's his vision, and that's what made it American Werewolf, and that's why I think it's unique, and I think that's why it still holds up.
Like a lot of my movies, it I don't know why, but it's crapped on, and then years later, it's like a classic. So I don't know. I'm happy people like it.
After 25 years, the extraordinary legacy of An American Werewolf in London lives on. Thanks to John Landis, the horror genre is a little bit funnier, it's a little bit gorier, and Hollywood is forever trying to outdo Rick Baker in the special effects department, but to no avail. Fans worldwide still implore that naked American men are stealing their balloons, and that talking to a corpse actually is boring. So whether you're traipsing across the northern English moors or walking through the streets of London, wherever you are tonight, beware the moon.
This is the Werewolf of Beverly Hills. Say hello. Don't be scary.
Hey, John, he won't take no for an answer. No, I can't do Werewolf 3 right now. Thanks very much. Or 2.
The change had continued to change. And hey, if you're going to make noise over here, right, we're going to send you away. It's like...
You're going to have to cut round this bit.
I can assure you I don't find this in the least bit amusing.
I was on my way home one night, it was in the winter time, and it was about midnight, and I found myself on Edgware Road tube station, and the station was absolutely empty, except for me. And as I was sitting there waiting for my train, a guy appeared in front of me, and I just looked up at him, and he said, "You made me miss." It's you, isn't it? It's you, isn't it? God, it was such an the relief. I nearly gave him the contents of my wallet just out of sheer relief.